All right, I'm Anthony Piatt. That's Miguel Iterati. We're with Wage Rage Presents Piatt Picks. This is just a bit of a summer preview. A few great fights coming up at the end of July, the beginning of August. We're talking about Inoue versus Stephen Fulton, Errol Spence Jr. versus Terrence Crawford, and then the oddity of the three, Jake Paul versus Nate Diaz, which is, by the numbers of people that watch and by the pay-per-view, a big fight. And so we'll preview those three. Let's get to it, Miguel. Inoue had an injury a couple of months ago when he was scheduled to fight Fulton, and they've rescheduled it for July 25th. This one, luckily, it's going to be in Japan. It's going to be a big fight. That is going to be another 6 a.m. fight, folks, for your Eastern Standard Time. This is something we've talked about before. I've gotten up several Tuesdays at 5:30 to watch Inoue fight, and so we've got to see his development, and it's something that the American fans of Stephen Fulton, which I include myself among them, but the American fans that maybe don't want to get up that early, and I don't blame them, haven't got a chance to see Inoue and his development and why he is considered number one pound for pound on several of the pro lists and in the top three on basically all of them. Moving up in weight yet again to fight Stephen Fulton. Undisputed fight. This should be a really good one. Minus 290 Inoue, plus 210 for Stephen Fulton. I, for one, have no problem being awake at 6 a.m. to watch this fight, which could be, one of the top 5 fights of the year easily. Definitely one of the top 5 I'm excited about, to say the least.
Yeah, no, it's a very exciting match. Fulton's the guy who's got to step up here. He's the guy going into the Lion's Den. He's fighting the number one guy. The number one guy now pound for pound in some places. Yeah, that's what Inoue was meant to be. Annoying, I realize. But Inoue he's a modern fighter in terms of he's got the full backing of the Japanese resources behind him. He's the poster boy for the sport in the country. That's what makes him a big star. It's not a huge sport in Japan. But once you've gotten to his star level, now you are talking about a lot of star power. Now he brings people in and always fights at home. Fulton's got to overcome all of that, fighting in Japan can be, even for somebody who's enjoying the trip, can be difficult. Food.
And it's really odd, too, even for the home crowd, the fans don't get that excited, Miguel. You've seen it plenty. They really don't clap a lot. They'll almost a golf clap at the end of rounds and whatnot.
First time fighting in Japan for Fulton, he's going to feel that at some point.
It's going to feel just a lack of energy if you're used to screaming and yelling. Even if they're cheering for your opponent, at least you're hearing some noise.
He's uncomfortable with the food or something in the culture, or, or with his eyes open, like, wow, cool, like he's traveling for the first time. There's a lot of pressure on an opponent coming in to face Inoue.
That's right. That's right. Fulton is the bigger guy. He occupies a weight class above Inoue's current weight.
At almost minimum weight.
That's right.
And he was a world champion there. He actually sucked so much weight. And this is what I meant by him being a modern fighter and him meant to be where he is today. Is they brought him along, they put him in the lowest weight categories possible so he'd win world championships. Then he'd immediately vacate and move up. He actually skipped a weight class.
Right.
Somewhere between 108 and 112. He didn't hold the world title there. He just jumped it because he was sucking so much weight down. But the intent was always to have him go to the next weight classes when he can, when he's ready, win the world title there, and accumulate 7 or 8 world weight classes and 7 or 8 world titles,
Yep. Enjoying the likes of Pacquiao and Oscar De La Hoya.
Exactly, and that's what he's modeling himself after. So you can see the logic behind it. They followed it to a T. Here, maybe we're getting towards the top of where his potential will be. Maybe he'll go up a weight class in the future again. But he's getting to the point where we're no longer going to see him moving up. He will probably be topping off, and he'll have world championships and 7 or 8 world titles. If Fulton could break through, hopefully it's enough to make him a star. What's more likely to happen is that if Fulton breaks through, that there'll be a rematch clause and he'll be forced to go over there and fight a second time, and whatever they didn't throw at him his first time, they will the second time.
It's a tall task for the young Stephen Fulton, who I really appreciate his style. I like watching him fight. I think Inoue is got the true nickname of Monster for a very, very good reason. Inoue may not lose for a long time.
Power started out in the beginning that they gave him that nickname, the Monster, and his power has pretty much held through the weight class jumps.
It sure has, impressively.
Everywhere he's been.
Very impressive. So this fight will really tell the tale for both of these guys. I think they both come out of it and have a bright futures. I don't think any harm to Stephen Fulton for not winning this fight. And if he wins it, obviously, it catapults him into, top 7, top 5, pound for pound, something like that. I mean, it puts him up there somewhere. Of course, being the bigger guy and being a guy that's not already up on the list. Look, it's hard to get up the list. It's hard to move down. And when you're fighting a bigger guy, if you're talking about Canelo fighting Bivol, Canelo still stayed above him pound for pound. You talk about Lomachenko, a natural 125 guy, fighting Devin Haney, who's 160 walking around every day. Well, WBN, for example, took Haney and put him below Loma and switched Loma up. Ring Magazine already had Loma 7th and didn't have Haney on it. They're not going to put Haney on it. Despite what the judges did in that fight, when you look at the weight differential, even if the fight's close, even in a loss, you can still say pound for pound. Because honestly, biggest Devin Haney fans out there, if Devin Haney weighed the same as Loma walking around every day, if Loma was 160 or Devin Haney was 130 pounds without cutting weight, well. Yeah, he might not have survived the fight, as far as, he might have been knocked down quite a bit, knocked out. It clearly, the superior fighter, pound for pound, is Lomachenko in that fight, according to the professionals that make these lists. These are the guys that vote for Hall of Fame. These are the guys that make the rankings for the belts, So when people get mad about my analysis of pound for pound, I'm just telling you, look, the Ring Magazine invented the concept, and then you've got CBS, Sports Illustrated, ESPN, Independent UK, and a couple of others. And if you aggregate those, right, so neither one has to be perfectly right, but Rotten Tomatoes with movies takes all the professional movie critics and comes up with an average. And I tend to agree with that average pretty consistently down the board. There are some differences with, superhero movies and things like that. But at any rate, I digress. These experts and these pros tend to know what they're talking about. And whether we like it or not, the pound for pound voters are the Hall of Fame voters. So in the long run, who my grandkids are going to remember, if they both stop fighting now, Lomachenko's in the Hall of Fame and Devin Haney's not. Be mad about it in the comments. I'll reply. No big deal. But
he's a guy that, if Fulton gets to pull off the win here, I think Fulton, to be at his best heading into this fight and to give himself the best chance to extend his career positively, he should be preparing to go to Japan and beat this guy twice.
Yep.
When he does it, there will be a rematch clause invoked, and he will be forced to go over there again. And like I said, go the first time and go the second time, and be keenly aware of the differences, because there are going to be differences. It's going to be harder, and it's not, something that you should overlook. Because Inoue you're going to be taking something incredibly valuable from Inoue. That's why the rematch clause. But if you lose the rematch, then you kind of fall back to the pack. Andy Ruiz has been forced to do some work because he lost. He would have been a lot better off beating Joshua twice in a row. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he would have. No, I will say with him, what hurt him as well is there were stories coming out that he wasn't training, he was partying, and he was, he didn't take the, how it goes.
The similarities in there with Inoue, you're absolutely right. But there is that feeling that if Fulton beats him, look to the Andy Ruiz lesson. Generally as a motivation, because you should be considering that you're going to have to go back to Japan and you're going to have to do it again, and it's going to be harder the second time. So
I do respect Fulton. I think he's got his head in the game. I think if it's a tall task, but if he can win that first fight, I think he will take the second fight extremely serious. I don't think he'll do a Ruiz personally, but I think it's such a tall task that I just can't see myself, when Piatt Picks comes around, putting money on Stephen Fulton. I would like to be able to think there might be an angle as we get closer, but as of right now, I have full confidence in Inoue. So let's see if that changes by the time we make our pick for the July 25th fight. The odds would have to change drastically. I think a plus 210 is appropriate odds for Stephen Fulton. If a lot of money came in on Inoue and Fulton ends up a plus 400 or a plus 500, or if some book has him as that, I would consider taking that. Maybe 1 in 5 or 1 in 6 fights. Inoue is not at his best, and Fulton has a perfect game plan. But I'm going to bet that it's the 1 in 6 fights where Inoue, the 5 in 6 fights that Inoue wins is where I'm going to put my money on this one. So.
Sure.
Another big fight, Errol Spence Jr. versus Terrence Crawford. Long time in the making. We've talked about this fight recently. It's taken some time to make. People talk about crossing the street. We talk about PBC, Top Rank, free agency. Terrence Crawford going to Black Prime for a $10 million payday. That's the biggest fight of his career so far. When you rightfully call this sport prize fighting, how much you get paid is the biggest fight. The biggest fight in someone's career, or to build their knowledge, their legend, or to get belts can be different. But I didn't blame Terrence for that. But listen, I'm so glad this fight got made, Miguel. July 30th, just 5 days after, which tells us that Inoue fight must be on that Tuesday morning again schedule. 5 days after, July 30th, Spence and Crawford. Spence comes in at a minus 104. But even at negative money, he's not the favorite. Minus 122. Terrence Crawford, the guy from Omaha, comes in as the favorite. What a fight in the welterweight division. This is going to be a legacy fight. This is a fight people will probably talk about for a long time. It's definitely going to shake up. These guys are both in the top 5 pound for pound. It's going to shake up that situation. Crawford has traditionally been higher. He's been number 1 over the past few years. Switched out with Inoue and Usyk, Canelo to an extent as well. But that was kind of your top 5. Errol Spence has came up in that conversation now, and if he wins this, I think obviously surpasses Crawford. My thoughts on the fight are fairly brief on this. I think they're both great fighters. Spence might have a little bit more power, but I believe that Crawford is the guy that can change his style quicker and more effectively for whatever Spence brings at him. And I see Crawford making the needed adjustments and getting the win in this fight. It's a very close fight, and it's going to be a great fight. I'm leaning Crawford right now because, hey, this is our early summer preview and light predictions. Okay, we're not going too deep on it yet, but I'm leaning Crawford, and I don't blame anybody that bets on Spence. I know, having watched Twitter, boy, there's some guys that are entrenched in this fight. I mean, reputations are on the line. Videos have been made. People have been called out. Bets have been made. Ray Jackson, I'm thinking of you, my man. How you doing, Ray? Yeah, I know you got some stuff going on, even with Crawford himself. So there's some interesting social media aspects to this too. What I'm more concerned with is what happens in the ring. And wow, what a fight. Miguel, where's this fight going to go in your opinion? I mean, these guys are both great. This is top-notch stuff, right? Maybe number 1 in the world to the winner. Look out.
Yeah, I'm glad the fight was made. You know, when you go to the supermarket and you check the milk and there's a date on it, expiration date. You know, if Mayweather and Pacquiao were the milk, then you found that milk out in the garbage, like way past the expiration date. This one, I think it's getting close. But
Right.
I think this fight might have been a better fight, a purer fight 3 to 5 years ago.
Sure.
But it simmered, and we're still getting a thing here. To me, you know, you can talk about Inoue, you can talk about Canelo, you can talk about some of those guys. To me, Crawford's been the top pound for pound guy post Chocolatito. But that's for the last. I'm talking about the top number one guy, because his rise from lightweight to the 140 and then the 147, you know, those are serious weight. That's not jumping from minimum weight to, you know, light bantam or whatever, you know, whatever the dichotomy is down there, in a 3-pound jump. They're smaller men, so percentages and stuff like that, but you're talking about lightweight through welterweight, like frontline weight classes that he's dominated. And he's done it with, I don't know that I've seen anybody, they describe Sugar Ray Robinson that way. And I know that's high praise, but the way this guy switches from southpaw to orthodox stance in a fight,
Right.
multiple times in a round, with comfort, with not missing a beat, he doesn't even look awkward doing it. You know?
No. Yeah.
That kind of precision, he's not getting enough credit for, I think. But I think
I agree. That's why I'm going with Crawford.
I do recognize that, and that's why he does have that. He also, I think, has a mean streak. So, like, if he gets you on the hook, he will not let you off the hook.
Right.
He's not like, oh, I'm afraid. You never hear him say, I'm afraid I'm going to hurt my opponent. I don't think he's that worried about that aspect of it. So I think he can be mean. I think Spence is the stronger fighter, you know, in terms of knockout potential. But I think that the fact is Crawford, when he sets himself in and is landing and works for it, that if he sees it, he'll take it. And I like that aspect. I've always liked that aspect of how Crawford fights.
I agree. To me, Crawford has the footwork. He has the defense. He has the angles. He has the ring IQ, and he has the ability to adjust. And all that versus speed or versus power. I just see him being able to pull off the adjustments this guy can make instantaneously.
How old is Crawford?
It's impressive. You know, I think he is 30. Well, we better find out before I say, but I think he's in his late 30s.
We're beating on the MMA side, but we picked Cejudo, and he was a 36-year-old, top-notch athlete. You know, athletically, his accomplishments in wrestling in the Olympics and things, a gold medalist. So he's put in his time just like Crawford has.
That's right. That's right. So
you drop off post 35 on things like speed and precision, and that's Crawford's. So
well, it's a very interesting. That's a very interesting number you just threw out. Errol Spence Jr. is 33 years old. Born March 3rd of 1990. Crawford is 35, that magic number you mentioned. Now, he's not post 35. September 28th, 1987. So we've got until September. He's fighting in July. It's only a few more months until he's 36. So
the bottom line is that's what for Spence, waiting 3 years to do this was beneficial to him. I'd rather face Crawford at 36 with all that could potentially mean, because we don't know, than face him at 33 when he was in his, you know. So that could be part of it. But I think, you know, I do think I'm going to enjoy this fight, and we'll know if Crawford's going to be able to do his thing. And I think, that looks like it could be like an 8th or 9th round KO. If he starts to get his work in and does it, he'll put the pedal to the metal to get to the finish line. I think that's what the reputation here would be about. When you consider it, you had Gervonta Davis and Garcia recently, and Garcia was the guy who had bringing the major clout on social media and stuff like that. Which makes me feel like Gervonta Davis is stopping him with a body shot. It couldn't have been written better. Maybe he didn't intend to do it that way. Yeah, I took him out with his own punch.
Right.
It could have been written better for that. And I think, Crawford needs one of those, or it would be great to see Crawford do one of those. Get in there, figure him out, and finish him.
Well, you mentioned the body work. That's what I was thinking too, is that if there is, and we don't know for sure, but if he slowed it all and there's a little speed advantage for Spence, Crawford going to the body in the first 4 and 5 rounds is going to slow that speed down. It's going to slow Spence down in general if Crawford could hit him to the body a lot. And then it sets you up for that 7th or 8th, like you mentioned. Slow him down in the first 4 or 5, go to work on him in 5, 6, and 7, get it done in 7, 8, or 9. That's a possibility. I also see Crawford probably winning on points, even if Spence was a little faster, because of the defensive and the foot maneuverability. Probably get out of the way and actually score more punches, if not throw more. Yeah, I think he'll land more. So I can see. I just go in Crawford either way, decision or knockout. And as we get closer, again, this is early. These are early. We're making these for our summer preview.
Fight at this point.
It really is. I mean, it really is, and it's hard to pick either way. But that's just everything in me tells me that Crawford's got what it takes for this, because as good as Errol Spence is, I think Crawford is a generational talent, like you said. I think and at 35 and having not fought maybe as many of the other superstars as we'd like, maybe it's not the opportunity for him to ever reach. I don't want to say not reach his potential, but you know what I mean. If he's gotten to war with, the 4 kings, you didn't have the 1 king. I never seen a documentary called the 2 king, the 1 king. It was Sugar Ray and Duran and Hagler and Hearns. It was all of them fighting each other and built. And so to me, this is sort of that. This is 2 of them at least, and let's get to it. So very, very happy for this fight. And I don't know, maybe it's close enough we demand a rematch or something. Who knows? We'll see what happens with that one. One I don't think people are going to demand a rematch on. I think we have the best fight of the year. We just talked about 2 of them, possibly 2 of the best ones with Inoue, Fulton, Spence, and Crawford. I don't expect this one to be the best one, but it's worthy to talk about. Jake Paul and Nate Diaz. Of course, Jake Paul coming off of a loss of his first real boxer in Tommy Fury. And Tommy Fury's not at the top of the heavyweight division by any means. But it's an interesting fight here. Look, Jake Paul was able to barely beat Anderson Silva, who has showed that he can win some boxing matches prior to that. Is Nate Diaz as good a boxer as Silva? I mean, the Spider's got hands. So part of my brain goes to there. Well, maybe not, because Silva's a great fighter. I don't know that Diaz has got the same boxing skills. But then I switch over and I say, well, but Diaz maybe has a little more power and a little more crazy. he may be willing to get hit to go in there and hit Jake, whereas Silva, you could tell all along, was trying to definitely keep his distance and not really trade blows. And it was a good route for there. But having said that, with Diaz maybe wanting to go for it, I think Jake Paul is just good enough against MMA guys that I still see probably Jake Paul knocking out Nate Diaz. That's what my gut tells me right now. But in these little sideshow ones are a little hard to call. It's not like I can go watch a bunch of Nate Diaz boxing film, right? And see how much I like his actual boxing.
Here's the situation. I'm going to respectfully disagree with you on a couple points.
Okay.
I think Anderson Silva is a retired guy. Anderson Silva, when he was at the top of his game in MMA, was so good that he was accused of actually doing that, taking some fights like not 100% seriously because he was, not really challenged. Now, I think that if you walk into a fight, you change it completely. If one guy's there half-assed and the other guy's there 100% focused on trying to do what he has to do to win. And I think that's what you got with Anderson Silva. I think if you asked him before the fight if he's going to win, he ask most fighters in the UFC if they're going to win. Of course they're going to win because that's the pre-fight mindset. But I think Anderson wasn't in that. I don't think that was a real fight. Like, in that respect, Anderson didn't take it seriously the way he should have. I think that might change with Diaz because I think Diaz is a guy that more of his cash is that cred where, you don't mess with, like, the fight is a sacred realm of its own and you don't mess with the sanctity of that. I think that Diaz is one of the good guys that believes that. Like, fighting since he was 16 and the way he does that, get himself psyched up for fights and things. I don't see him being in there like, yeah, let's see how this one goes, like before the fight, smiling before getting in the ring and stuff. No, so I think there you've got more of a chance. We're going to know what if Diaz is serious, then I think we're talking about different levels. And you're right, we don't have a lot of tape on Nate boxing, but I can tell you things I've heard. And since they were very young, him and his brother have always kind of seeked out, they're known for jiu-jitsu and stuff like that, but at some point you can tell in their game they picked up hands somewhere.
Right.
And they both knew that, and they both understand volume punching and things like that. So now where does that pedigree come from? My understanding is that they spent a good bit of time as sparring partners. We were talking about pound for pound guys, Crawford, Inoue, before that Chocolatito. This is another guy that was on that list. This is Andre Ward.
Oh shit! Yeah.
They both sparred with Andre Ward, and I've seen Andre in a boxing setting where he doesn't really, where there's no need to give the Diaz the respect of like, they're great fighters, or whatever. There's no need for him to do that. And he made it a point to state that those guys were serious and that he got great rounds from them. So whatever it is he was trying to do.
Well, if that's the case, I mean, if we trust Andre Ward,
yeah, they put in the work with him. They're doing the work, and they realize they've got a gold medalist and a world champion in front of them. They're drinking that up. And if they spent a couple years doing that, I'd argue that he's more prepared in boxing than Jake Paul has with whatever crash course he's been doing over the last couple of years as well.
Well, look, Nate Diaz is a plus 240. Jake Paul's a minus 340. So when you look at these and see Stephen Fulton as we go back at plus 210, I'm not very tempted to take that. But after listening to and as I said, I think Nate Diaz will go for it. I mean, you kind of said you were going to disagree with me. I was a little disappointed in the fact that you didn't really disagree with me that much. I mean, because I do think Diaz is capable and is going to go for it. I'm just afraid that might open him up for a shot because Jake Paul doesn't have a lot, but he's got a hell of a right hand. I think
that's really unsophisticated for a Diaz who's going to just be getting. Anderson Silva wasn't playing defense. Okay. He got caught with his feet messed up, and he got dropped.
Crossed. Yeah.
I really don't think that was a UFC world title fight that he wouldn't have gotten up and continued and stayed on the fight. But you had him at 45 years old.
Yep.
He didn't care.
Right. Right. So I like what you're saying though. There's something to be said. Again, this fight's not till August 5th. at the time of this recording, we're a few months away still, but at plus 240 right now. Now, as it gets closer and people wake up to this fight, you might expect Jake's media followers to put money on him. And so if that Nate Diaz number moves up and we can get a 275 or a plus 300, then I do think there's definitely a bet to be made there. Because I think Nate will be more aggressive and more capable than Silva, although Silva may be, he'd had a couple more professional boxing matches. He didn't look bad, truthfully. Who did he beat? He beat Chavez Jr., right? He beat say again.
And Diaz concentrated on his boxing. He didn't really kick all that much. He was more of a boxer in MMA.
Yeah.
So his game is more suited to this. This is actually easy for Diaz because not having to train on the ground, not having to do any of that stuff, it's going to make this training actually easier and perhaps even more fun.
You're right. It could be a sleeper. What a great. This is one to watch. This is one to watch.
How does Diaz motivate himself?
Yeah.
He's a guy that's got to find an angle that kind of gets him like he's Superman, like he's righting a wrong. Like there's something wrong, and I'm going to beat the hell out of it until it's right. Whether this guy doesn't belong in the top whatever, or they're bad-mouthing me, or they think I can't fight, I'm going to correct the impression here. And I think here he has a chance to really define what a real fighter is versus a joke fighter. Mm-hmm. By giving it a serious performance and putting an exclamation point on this, if he can do it.
I would love to see it. I really would.
If he can't do it, then it speaks to, maybe Jake Paul has moved further along. But that's going to be like, I'm counting on Nate to at least be trying to do that. To trying to give me an exclamation point win. So this whole circus of crap. I'm glad he got his payday. If anybody deserves it, it's those guys. So he got his payday. Now this circus of crap can go away. And I think that's at the end of the day what Nate, the paradox of Nate is he hates this shit. But he's going to go and grab his money. But if he can give me that message of showing a real fighter versus a joke, and it can be illustrated, it could be the end of all this. That would be a motivator. I would love for Nate to be able to pull that off. Drop this guy, leave him dead, take 1 million of his followers, and let him go make joke videos for the rest of his life because he's not a fighter.
Right. And hey, looking back at his record, he's lost by submission and decision, numerous times. Only Jorge ever knocked him out with a hand. He was knocked out once by Josh Thompson with a kick. But only a hand has only ever knocked him out once. That was Jorge Masvidal in his entire UFC career. So the chances that Nate has a chin against a full boxing glove instead of an MMA glove, I mean, Miguel, you're starting to win me over here. Like, I don't know that Jake will knock him out.
It's because it's not sophisticated. He's not going to set up a punch. He's not going to, he did it with a left hook and then he did it with a right-handed body punch. There's no sophistication. The big punch that's coming there. So I think.
Yeah, you're right. This is I love this show because I was looking at it from a boxing standpoint purely. You're bringing that MMA stuff, but then mixing Andre Ward in, and then you got me looking over here at Nate's record. It really does. I mean, the signs really are pointing to Nate not getting knocked out. Again, only once has he been knocked out by a fist in his entire career. So, and I don't recall that fight. Was it a ground and pound? Was it,
I don't remember the exact finish. I remember thinking that Masvidal was looking to be the fresher body throughout the fight.
Yeah.
That could be a little bit of a factor here if Nate's a little worn out. But I think he's got some time off. And
he doesn't have to wrestle, as you said. He doesn't have to get himself tired on the ground.
Another thing that's interesting here to check out is on the way there, the weigh-ins and things. Where does Nate come in? Because he's a 170-pounder max in UFC. So what's he going to walk around and come in at? And also, we're just talking truths here. I want to see him without his shirt on. Because at 38, if all of a sudden he's ripped up and looking like, if steroids were to play a part, people blame Jake Paul, but they could really help Nate clean up for one big performance here as well. And if there's not a lot of testing, not a lot of that stuff going on, that might be a tell sign. Nate's the pro. I don't think he needs it, but all those things come to mind.
Recuperative is very helpful from that is what it's used for a lot of times, of course. Paul last fight came in at 183.6 against Fury, and as you said, 170 for Nate Diaz was the weight class for the UFC.
180 though, that's not bad. He probably if he's 170 in a UFC fight, he probably walks around 180. He
doesn't have to cut weight, more than likely, for this fight. That's another benefit for Diaz. Hey, look, the smaller guy, he's smaller. Well, maybe he's smaller because he cuts to 170 to fight in that weight class in the UFC. He's 175, 180, pretty easy. So if he doesn't have to cut weight like he does for UFC, maybe you don't see that more lethargic Nate Diaz that you saw against a Jorge Masvidal. Maybe that had to do with the weight cut, getting older, and the weight cut combined, of course. No weight cut now.
It has to do with mindset. He gets pressure where it's about money, the fighting, and to him, I think he's made his money, and he deserves to have made his money. He's got on the business end people I think that take care of him and stuff, so they're making sure that his taxes are paid and he's not going to turn out poor. And that's what makes him such a great example. Because, you got to, at some point, start to take it seriously at that way, or else you really are going to be ripped off by the promoters and everybody else. So his keen eye for that stuff, there are times where the promotions have not done a good job motivating. And he goes into a fight kind of like, I'm here because of the contract and stuff like that. I don't think you get your best performance here. At this point, he's out of his UFC contract. He signed to do this because I think he's got a mission. If that mission is, let's erase this blight from the fight game. This isn't fight game. Put this over where, I've seen fighting in claymation. Put this over there because that's what it's closer to than Jake Paul is to a real fighter.
I'm here for it. I really hope it doesn't. At this point now, my money's going to end up on Nate. I can tell. Whether I make it an official dog pick or just a dog watch, but I've elevated him to dog watch already here and now through this conversation.
Considering it, everybody, the fight's 2 months from now, but still, this is a fight that's going to get a lot of attention. So I would stay on top of that number and start to see if it fluctuates one way or another. And see, you don't want to pounce on something, because if it starts to move the other way and you can't get that number, then, however, we're real early on this one. I think both sets of people come with diehard fans that'll vote for him. So I don't think the odds you get there are necessarily the best odds for who's going to win. I think that it's their crowds weighing in.
Sure. Absolutely. That's going to factor in as well. So great show, Miguel. Man, I appreciate it. These are fun. Nice little summer preview here. 3 great fights upcoming. Again, we went over Inoue Fulton. That's July 25th, 6 a.m. It's a Tuesday. Errol Spence and Terrence Crawford the following Saturday, July 30th, around midnight. And Jake Paul, Nate Diaz, August 5th, around 11 p.m. Honorable mention, Butterbiev and Callum Smith the following week. Nothing really much there to talk about yet, but good summer of boxing coming up. We've already had some nice fights this year, and we're going to keep on with the Bet US lock. There wasn't one this week, but we'll look into that again. We'll look into all the weekly action. We've got Teofimo and Taylor. But this is a little bit longer look. This was a fun show to do with you, looking at really some of the marquee fights that are coming up those 3 weeks in a row, or at the end of July, beginning of August. What a great slate, Miguel.
Yeah. Like, share, subscribe at Piatt Picks on YouTube. Thanks a lot.